think we looked at that first, the lower part of the jaw here. We looked at that. Remember, what we're trying to find is how much force is exerted at E based upon an input back here by the user of 150. So that's the deal, right? We looked at the first jaw.
We did the upper part too, but we were starting that.
We were just starting on the upper part. So we had, and my recommendation again is that you kind of keep these parts, as you take them apart, keep them about in the same place where they lie in the machine. You're just less likely to make a mistake then. So we had C and D, and we're looking for how much force it exerts at E. And we couldn't get to that because we had too many unknowns on this original piece that we look at, the lower jaw. And I think I put the forces like that, is that right? Remember, for the most part, it's not too crucial. Think about it a little bit, but don't waste too much time on trying to get the little individual directions. Because it all comes out in the wash anyway. All right, so now we're looking at the upper jaw, the long handle here. Oh, this thing's beautiful. You just gotta love it. And then we've got point C there again. There's the other side of E. So C will turn around because it's equal and opposite to whatever we've got there. We don't have those yet. So we don't have that. And then I think we talked a little bit about what was going on at that link A, the pin A, which is about there maybe. What was the deal with that one? We figured out a little bit about it, the forces that are there.
It goes through number AB.
Yeah, that's a pin connection with a two-force member, which means we're going to know where we're going to know the inclination, I guess you could say, of that piece, because AB itself is a two-force member. So we know that the forces are going to be lined up right along there. It doesn't mean when you go to analyze the forces at that point, if you need to, that it's not still useful to break them into their component directions. What it does mean, though, is that there's less, not the same number of unknowns that we might have had otherwise, because now we know the direction of A and B. So you can still break it into the component directions if you need to, but those are related by the sines and cosines of the angle anyway, so it's not really anything we would have done differently. It's just less unknowns now. All right. So I think that's where we. Oh, there was the 150 input load there. We're trying to find out, given that, how much force is exerted by the machine at its contact with whatever it is that's cutting through it at point E. So what's next? We have still 1, 2, 3, and 4 unknowns. That angle's not unknown anymore, but I think it's 23.2 degrees. So we still have, we have 4 unknowns with that one still. E, the direction and magnitude of C, and the magnitude of A is still unknown. So we can't do that piece yet either. So what?
Do the last piece.
There's only one unknown with part AB. Right? We just don't know the magnitude. We know the angle. So can we do that one? Because if we knew A or B, we know that. We'd only have 3 unknowns. We could finish the part with the top jaw. Can we do part AB with only a single unknown? All we get out of AB is what we already know anyway, which is these are equal and opposite. We don't have a moment equation we can apply here, remember? So the only 2 equations we have are the sum of the forces in the x and the y, and because of the nature of this, those aren't independent, so we don't have anything else we can do but say A equals B.
Can you treat the top part of the handle as anchored and then just do a moment with the rest of the structure?
Treat this as what?
As if it can't move, and then just do a moment with everything else?
Well, the parts can move, but we're not analyzing them while they're moving. So none of these things move anyway. We can take the moment about any point we want. We're looking for the static analysis with that load. What's the force here? Even though the parts can move, they're not moving.
I was saying use the 150 newtons with everything but the top piece and do a moment about C, and then you can get the force at A.
Everything but this?
Yep. And then use the other 3 pieces as if they're rigid, and do a moment about C, and then you should be able to get a force at A, right? At least get the Y force at A.
Do the moments about what point? C. But you still have forces at D, B, A, and E.
Well, those are unknown.
Just because the piece, top piece, if you take the
Those are
top piece.
unknown forces. I'm just saying use the known 150 newtons to create a moment. But maybe.
All right, well, let's see, I have to draw it to see. Okay, so we've got the lower piece, we've got the length, and then we've got the lower jaw. So just something as beautiful as that looks, right?
Yeah.
So we have the 150 there, we have E there, and then we have the forces at C, and just the force at A. Right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
How many unknowns is that?
Because there's too many.
Yeah, it's still 4 unknowns. It's a good try, but it's still 4 unknowns. Doesn't mean we might not have to come to that.
Oh, wait a second. Oh, sorry.
I can't wait a second.
If you were doing a moment about C,
Too late.
the forces
Back
at
to
C
tape
would
up.
matter.
What?
If you were doing a moment about C, those 2 forces at C wouldn't matter. There'd only be 2 unknowns. There'd be just E and A.
Oh, and then I have to draw it again. This thing is ugly enough that it is. It's really ugly. It's just a piece. All right, so we've got the 150 there, E there. We're going to take the moment about C, so that point doesn't matter, and then we have A there. Right? That's more the picture now you're talking of?
Yeah. And then there won't be C.
And we don't have to worry about C if we do the moment about C.
Right.
So we don't have to worry about AX. We have AY, E, and 150, right?
AYE? What?
No, you have AY, you have E, and you have the 150, right? Because the AX would cancel out because it goes through C.
Why does A, oh, A, yeah, A is lined up with C. So I can improve the drawing a little bit with that. You're right. So if we did break that into components, we only have AY. So could we then find E from that?
Yes.
In terms of AN, or AY.
Well, there's 4 unknowns because the relationship between these two is not unknown, just the magnitude. If you find the magnitude of one of them, you'll know the magnitude of the other because you know the angle. So there's still 4 unknowns, but if we sum the moments about C, we'll have AY and E in the same equation. Then what? I mean, that's okay. Still, we're going to need other parts in here. We're still going to need, so it kind of gets down to maybe you like doing that and you can start to solve it from there. Somewhere you have to start getting the parts. Somewhere you have to hope that I don't have too many unknowns. Because this is still 4 unknowns and it's the same unknowns as are in this piece. So you're not going to be able to go to this piece. You're going to have exactly the same equations. So, what I guess the last thing to look at is the bottom piece. We haven't looked at that yet. We have that there. We have B about here. We know its angle, and then we have D here. Flash. All right. So, can we do that one?
About D perhaps?
Yeah, that one we can do. We only have 3 unknowns. And it's a, it's the 3 contact points where the forces are applied are not collinear. Remember, if they're collinear, we still couldn't solve that. But they're not. So that one then we can solve. We can solve that. What's the most efficient route? Probably solve it for dx, dy, and then we could solve for E here. If we solve for, actually we don't even need dx, dy, we need dx. Because then we could sum the moments about C, and we'd have dx, and then we could find E. Alright, so take a couple minutes to flesh that out a little bit. Should be able to bring it to a conclusion. You could, if you want, make a 3/4 member out of this. I don't know if it's going to help much. Because remember, with a 3/4 member, everything goes through a single point. All the forces must go through a single point. That, if you can find that point, would then give you the direction of the force D, and that's one less unknown. That's a separate equation you could bring in, if you will. But it's not an additional one, it's just a separate one. Because once you link those, they're not independent then. couple seconds to come up with those forces at D. You can do it as a 3/4 member. I don't know if the geometry's not a little bit cumbersome. Yeah, it's probably not worth doing it that way. Looks like it's pretty straightforward, summing the forces, summing the moments about some chosen point. Probably, well, it's up to you where you want to sum the moments. If you sum them about D, you only have one unknown then in that equation. I like some of these drawings. Some of these are pretty darn good. Who's going to go do this on SolidWorks now? By the way, for your project, especially if you're in SolidWorks now, is that just it's just you? I think nobody else is in SolidWorks now. So you can combine your final project in SolidWorks with your final project in here. Who's going to get the $1 million prize today? Well, not Bill. For which piece?
There's no words on force because it's not offset a little bit. It's different.
But, I mean, for which part?
It doesn't matter. I was just doing
Okay. You were just Allen sizing. Is it working out? Kinda. Should be, let's see, if you sum the moment about B,
No, it doesn't sound like it, does it?
if you sum the moment about B, you only have dy then, is that right? Is it working? Want to check anything as you go, B? Yeah, 1650? Yeah, that's what I have too. It does not count as an independent equation, just write that down when I say it. What part are you doing? Not a free body diagram, okay. Yeah, we should figure that that link AB in compression, as would make sense if you're squeezing the two handles together. Comes out to be about 1,650 newtons, so it's a lot of force for an input of only 150 newtons. E. There's the $1 million right there. I think you have enough time if you want to just run down there and get that now. Get it deposited in your account and start earning some interest. Now, so come up with the factor, it's called mechanical advantage. The factor by which your input force was improved. And then think about the costs, because to get that mechanical advantage, you have to pay for it somewhere else. So see if you can figure out where. Figure out what the mechanical advantage is. And then figure out where that cost comes from to get that mechanical advantage. Because nothing comes free. Doing okay?
Yeah, just, I don't think I have any,
You have dy. Yes, 500.
CD, or, that's the same thing. CY,
Yeah, but what, same thing, you went from DX where D goes.
BY.
Okay, like you D.
No, I solved that afterwards.
Everything but E.
Oh, E, okay.
Yeah, E is what we're looking for. Remember, we want to see with an input of 150 newtons,
And leaves you only with BY.
what's the output at the jaws at E?
Find what B is. And then
Okay,
plug
yeah,
that
those
in.
are right. So you're doing okay? Bill, all right? Okay, if you sum the moments about A, you'll have dy on one side and the input on the other side, so you can find dy. And then in the sum of the forces, you can find the other ones until you can get dx. And then you can go to that lower jaw. Once you've got dx and dy, you go to the lower jaw and sum the moments about C, and all you'll have left is E. You can, if this was your design project, you'd still want the forces at C.
So doing something
But
like,
for the question, we don't need them.
doing something like that for like the project isn't good enough, like we need more.
Yeah, you need either more parts, like that thing has more parts, plus this has adjustability to it that must have some factor. Probably has to do with, for a wider separation there, you adjust it to keep the jaws parallel. Because if the jaws aren't parallel, then the tendency is for the piece to try to squirt out, and there's got to be some friction force holding it in. You're going to have to take into account that too. Plus, if you do for different angles, because this is just one setting we have here, but you could put all kinds of different pieces in there. So there's a lot more offered. You want that? It's tempting. That's why we have this permanently set at a low setting, so you can't actually, oh wait, maybe you can get your finger in there.
Does it work now? Where are you now?
Same.
This one's nice because you can get all the dimensions off of it, without a lot of trouble. You can always go buy something from the Lowe's, take the dimensions, and then take it back. There are a couple of you probably have stuff like this in your trunk anyway.
I have the same bolt cutters at work. Very good at removing rusty chains. Is that what you?
Yep. Now, what's the mechanical advantage? And where do you have to pay for that mechanical advantage? The mechanical advantage is the multiplication of the input to get the output. So, the mechanical advantage, I don't think we really have a symbol for it, is the output, which is what you get at E, the reason we're doing this, divided by the input. Usually that's greater than 1, because you want to take the relatively feeble human hand and turn it into many, many times that force on the piece. However, there's somewhere where you have to pay for that in some way. I use the word paying. For example, you've used a block and tackle before, and you put a certain amount of force on the chain, and you multiply that force a lot so you can lift something very heavy. But to do that, you got to pull a whole bunch of chain. In fact, it's by the same factor. If you lift something 10 times, then you're going to have to pull 10 times as much chain. So it's the same kind of thing here. However, like with a block and tackle, sometimes that cost is more than worth it. You know, it's kind of a pain to pull all that chain.
You gotta use 2 hands for this.
No,
That's your cost instead of,
Yeah, right.
no,
because it's too far apart for one hand.
no, it's
Well,
not.
in real bolt cutters, not handheld, but the ones you have over there. You can't
Use that with one.
put it across the bowl.
Put your hand in there.
Put it across the
Okay, Trevor, he wants your finger in there.
Put it across the bowl.
No, that's, well, yeah, kind of, that's the cost. We'll talk about it in a second when we have the numbers. Bill, you got something? Got some answers there? Almost? Dana? Almost? Okay, we got a couple people coming up with the right numbers. So we've got the mechanical advantage now. BJ have it? BJ has something else.
Let's discuss
The
this.
advantage is just
Now, there are situations where you might want your,
150.
That's it? That's all it is?
there are situations where you might want that decreased. If you're doing something very sensitive, like if you have a pair of calipers and you're trying to lift a blood vessel during surgery, you don't want to smash it. So you want the multiplication. Yeah, I know. That's, yeah, I lost my medical license too. Too many smashed blood vessels.
Well, I said yesterday about moving point D back. I think with these bolt cutters, point D won't be perpendicular or parallel, whatever, yeah, won't be directly underneath point C until bolt cutters are closed. Up until that point, it's to the left of C so that you get the mechanical advantage of dx or dy. Right now, you're only getting dx. But if you move it back, the mechanical advantage will go up a lot.
If D moves to the left,
Yes, because then you get a moment using the entire force of.
no, that would be the wrong way, because, oh yeah, because this would be down.
It'll be moving
It'll
it down
down
and it'll add to the moment
Yeah.
about C.
Yeah.
And I think with rear bolt cutters, it doesn't actually come directly underneath the other pin until bolt cutters are closed.
Well, these are my bolt cutters. Plus, you don't know if we're trying to cut the thing at E or just hang on to it. Pliers only hang on to things, you know, if you're looking at vice grips, their purpose is just to hang on to something. And so, that's different than if we want to cut it. And there's another thing you have to do with this kind of project, and we'll talk about it in a couple weeks, is the fact that if you're trying to cut through something, we have this wedge shape, and we're going to talk about how that works as well in a couple weeks. So that's something that would come into account if you had cutters instead of regular pliers. All right, so I think we're pretty much there. Dana, did you get it finally? So it looks like something around 15, 20 newtons, give or take a little bit. For an input of 150, so a mechanical advantage of a little over 10. Meaning that for every newton of input, there's 10 newtons of output. Actually, it doesn't even have to be newtons, it could be pounds too, it works just the same.
Is that what we did with the suitcase thing and the I don't know, when we were talking about the suitcase thing?
Yeah, kind of, but that was just a simple simple lever arm. You have a long handle that could lift 150, and it's down closer to the fulcrum because your hand's way far out. You don't have to lift it with 150 pounds, I think it was. And there's a cost of 10 somewhere in the use of this thing. And it's that for every unit of closure of the jaws, you're going to have to move the handle 10 times that. But if that's what you need, if you need that 1,500 Newton output, that's not much cost at all. So you're more than likely willing to put up with it. Okay. Any questions for the next thing we can look at? All right. This will be our last machine. I'll leave it to you. Bonus points, however, if you do it with how should I put it? If you do it with a force triangle. Maybe I'll just leave it to you to figure out what that means at first. So imagine we have some kind of trap door thing. And it's run by a hydraulic actuator. Something like that. Simple trap door. Half a meter on either side. And we'll label these. A, B, and C. Actuator is capable of applying 6 kilonewtons. And it's conveniently at 45 degrees. So find the forces at A and at C. Now, if this was one you were thinking of for a project, to see an analysis for range of motion. You know, if it goes from all the way open to all the way shut, whatever that might be, because that's gonna change all the angles. Once it comes in contact at point C, that's gonna change all the forces as well. But remember, it's a statics class, so we're not looking at it necessarily while it's opening. Just a static analysis at different points in between. That's what I mean by range of motion. So who's gonna put first dibs on that bolt cutter for a project? This one doesn't have any particular difficulty in it necessarily, but we're going to look at it in a slightly different way to look at the solution when we get there. Thank goodness, Mr. Raptor, you're serious about those drawings.
The entire, like, diagonal force is still 6 kilonewtons from that? Is that what that is?
This can exert a force of 6 kilonewtons. You decide how, where, and why. Well, we know why, because I said so. You decide how and where. Okay, no real tricks in this one. But we are going to give it a little bit different look at a solution in a second. When we get near the end. So some of the things in the project, as you start thinking towards that, we might not necessarily have yet, but you can certainly get started on it. Like if we're talking about the cutter there, we haven't talked about wedges yet. They're pretty straightforward for most applications. Alienating the problem.
Are the numbers right?
Well, some of the digits look familiar. Maybe not necessarily the order they're in. Those aren't vectors. Those aren't vectors.
What do you mean not vectors?
I mean, they're not vectors. Can't say it in Latin. Vector has three things, magnitude, units, where's the direction?
Oh. I thought that was just assumed obvious, you know.
Oh, Alan, famous last words.
Come on, it's a room of engineers.
Left as a exercise for the reader. That's, you just kind of wave your hands and say that. You're still working on the drawing. Oh, okay. You can pick it up a little bit. You okay? Got it? Stuck? No?
Yeah, I don't really know.
Where are you stuck?
Well, I wrote B into components, is new, but I don't even know if that's right, so I don't know if I can assume that that's 6 county. Support networks.
Okay, good questions. You guys agree?
What you got
Or are you stealing?
What'd you get, that C? Okay, got that, as far as I got. I just wanna make sure I have that right. So it just
What are these?
these are for my moments.
For your sum of the moments? Or are those
Moments around.
moments in the,
Directional moments around that point.
caused by what?
Coupled by the force of that 6 kilonewton force.
Okay. Be careful. Forces do cause moments,
Learn
but
anything?
if you have both in there,
You're in
then you
another
change
world.
the problem. You can have one or the other,
Okay.
but if you have both, you've changed the problem.
Just look at the answers, don't look at the rest. Scare you.
Nope.
Angles.
Wait, what?
Fine.
Wait,
Not the
no,
bottom.
wait, what? No,
No?
no.
The angle's wrong?
No, I think, as usual, I think you have the answer in there somewhere, but you've alienated it to death, and it's kind of buried with some other stuff.
Okay. Follow that clue.
Is CX and X do the same point? Can you assume that? Can you assume that CX is on the same line as AX, or is it a little bit higher?
Yeah,
at the very
assume
edge of
that
it?
the thickness of this is negligible compared to the
Okay.
length.
That makes sense. Huh?
What do you have?
I have the same answer as him, so I don't know if that means.
Well, let me see, because he alienated his problem, you may not have. You may have only Trevor-sized it. Oh, you guys make it so hard to find the answers.
I put a box around it.
No, yeah, but I don't know, I see what that means from drawing. Your drawings are, you took technical freehand sketching, why aren't they better? I had to talk to those professors.
I know.
Okay, I think so,
Well,
as best I can tell.
some of those might have just kind of done in my head. kind of
Combination of handwriting analysis and.
What am I missing here? I got the degrees, direction, what am I missing?
Well, what's this, for one?
I said don't look at this, just look at my answers. Are they right? I don't always fill in all that stuff because I kind of go fast, you know?
Yeah, well, and then you finish early,
But
and
it's
spend,
right.
instead of spending the time filling in what's missing, because you went fast, you spend the time defending it.
Well, I'm an artist, so I can see things on the page that you don't see.
You definitely can see things on the page I can't see. That is very true. I don't dispute that for 1 second. All right, so most of you have have a free body diagram of the door itself, which is what we're going to need because that's where the forces are. Most of you got that actuator is a two-force member, because no matter what its length is or what force it's applying, it's still only pinned at either end. So that's a two-force member. Call that B, I guess. And we know its angle. At A, we have a simple pin. And what do we have at C? Meaning, what kind of force does that exert on the door, ABC? The point of the roller is that there's no lateral force then. There's only a vertical force. So that's all we have at C then, is just that piece. And then the other part, well, we can at least get a X would do that, and probably AY does that. Because that actuator tends to lift the door up either way.
So, would this be?
Nope. Not. No, I don't think so. No. Not what I'm getting. Here, some of the moments about A, that will allow you then to find C directly, because you'll have the part of Bx and By. And Bx goes through A, By we know, because you know the angle and the magnitude. From that you can find then C. By at half a meter must equal C at the full meter moment arm. And we know what Vy is, so you can find C from that directly. Which is 212. Kilograms.
I had that, but then I figured.
Right? You got that, BJ?
Yeah.
And then you can, then now that you have By and C, you can solve for Ay. And you get Ay equal to, also equal to 212. Boy, that 45-degree angle is convenient. Just when you need a 45-degree angle, there's one. And then you can get AX from just it being the part of to oppose BY. Now, that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at the problem is to realize that all of the forces must sum to 0. And you know the direction of 2 of them, which means, and there's only 3, which means you can draw the force triangle that represents that, and you can solve for it. Not necessarily a better way, not necessarily an easier way, just another way to look at the problem. So we don't know which angle A is going to be, but we do know which angle C is. And we know that all 3 added together is going to equal 0, which means that so A plus be, now what's the easier way to set this up? Oh yeah, B we know is 45. So we know that's 45, and we know how long that is. We know that that would be drawn to scale as 6 kilonewtons. And then A must close the triangle because otherwise they don't sum to 0. And then when you've got that, you can use the law of sines and the law of cosines as needed to find any of the parts that are missing.
That's what you were talking about. I thought I was trying to make the fourth triangle with that. That was just my A triangle.
Oh.
My A force triangle.
Oh. I hope you people understand what I go through when I bring down
Just trying to get the
papers.
Just trying to get the answer.
I know the answer's in there somewhere, I just have to dig and dig and dig, but it's usually in there. All right, any questions?